What's up, ladies and gents? On the last episode, I said we would do the skid plate and the exhaust in this episode. Well, this big chunk of steel that you can probably only see half of is my skid plate. Now, that being said, I have an advantage over most people. I have two different good friends that own their own fabrication business. One being Blum Brother Customs and the other being Garland Fabrication. And Garland Fabrication took care of this for me on this one. The one on my car, Blum Brothers did. But they have CNC plasma cutters and they've got large mechanical brakes where they can do the bends and stuff. So I have a little bit of an advantage. So I apologize for that. You know, not to brag, I have friends. So lucky me. But depends on your rule book what is required for a skid plate. Some places don't require one at all. And the polyethylene, the crosshatch polyethylene tanks that come from the factory are really strong. They are. Usually they aren't the weak point when there is an issue on a racetrack. Usually the weak point ends up being the straps that hold the tank in. And because I live in the Northeast and I race with a lot of guys from the Northeast, we are in the rust belt where they use salt on the roads in the winter and it eats steel. So if you're building a race car and you're not putting a fuel cell in it, you absolutely 100% need to take a very good look at these straps and the hardware that holds them in. Where they're bolted in, you know, the structure above that they're bolted into. Serious, very good look at it and make sure that it's solid, because this is usually where the issue comes in. The straps break, the tank falls down, it gets ripped out from under the car and something's on fire. There was a video a couple years back where this happened. A tank come out of a car, bounced down the racetrack, and landed right on a dude's windshield. Well, we don't have windshields, it's dirt, but right on the screen on the front window area of the car, and then burst into flames. That's not cool, and I would have hated to be the guy in that car. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, he got out okay and he was fine, but you gotta inspect it. You gotta make sure it's safe, okay? You hear me preach about safety all the time, but these straps, okay? And somebody inevitably is gonna say something like, well, you should put a fuel cell in it. These are safe if they're in properly. I've had the same one in my car for years. Original tank, original fuel pump. I should really check the fuel pump in my car. But the skid plate in that car. And the one time I did have an issue, it's because a piece of something hit my fuel line and split it. The fuel line was actually the issue. Now, some tracks let you run the fuel line through the car inside, like a conduit or something inside the car, you know, out of the elements out here, which is fine if your track allows you to do that. I keep them under here with metal, and I had that one freak thing, and it was my right rear wheel broke off and went under the car. Long story, I didn't get hurt, no big deal. Skid plate. Somebody's gonna ask, will I sell skid plates? We did the math on the skid plates, what it costs for material right now, because I'm sure it's gonna get more expensive, and the time it takes to make it. Now, we're not even done. This is a rough cut. I'm gonna have to trim some off of this here. I'm gonna trim some off the back probably to get this in there, and the brake can only bend this so far. I'm gonna have to bend this over even more with a hammer to get it where it needs to be, and I'll show you guys that when I get to it. But it would be $200 for me to sell you this piece right here. And then you would still have to fabricate the straps, which is, you know, this part here, for the back side of it to hold it in. The front side we bolt up here, the back of the firewall, which strangely enough, it almost looks like that was done before on this car, but that's not possible because this was a street car. Either way, I'll show you as we get to that part, but that would be $200, and you would have to pick it up because I'm not gonna try to ship this, all right? So, I mean, if you live up in my area and you do want one of these, we can make them for you, or I can have them made for you, but like I said, it's gonna be $200 for a skid plate. It's necessary. I personally think it's necessary. Some people don't. Anyways, that's the information. There you go. You got that information. So I got my little tripod stand here, Harbor Freight hoist thing, and we'll get this skid plate up on here. get this car lowered down a little bit to hold this up in there, and I can knock it back and forth and get it lined up where I want it. I'm gonna have to bend that lip over first. I got a little bit ahead of myself, so I'm gonna have to bend that lip first, but then we'll get this up here, in here, figure out where we're gonna put the bolts in the front here, and then I'll have to bend the straps and get them tucked up in here for the back side. So we got a little trimming to do, a little fitment, a little bending, but we'll get this skid plate up in there, and then after we get the skid plate up in here, then we can tackle the exhaust. I'm hoping that little light there I got is enough light so that you can actually see me, because the car is basically blocking the garage lights. Hopefully you can hear me, because I'm kind of far away from the camera. The last video I noticed it was like grainy, kind of blurry. I apologize. I cleaned my lens on it's my phone that we're taping on. So hopefully it's a little bit clearer and you can see me and you can hear me. And maybe in the future I will buy a different camera and maybe a microphone or something. But right now I don't get paid for this. It's not monetized. I don't have enough whatever they need to monetize it. So it's all on me, and honestly, it's just easy on my phone. I can tape on my phone and I can upload right from my phone. If I get another camera, then I gotta, play the SD card game or a cable to a computer, and then I gotta edit on the computer. I have editing software right on my phone. It's easier this way. I apologize if it's grainy. Maybe we'll upgrade in the future, okay? We'll get there eventually. It's still early, but all right, let's get to this mess. All right, so as you can see, we've got this up in here now. For the time lapse there, you saw me bend this front lip over a little bit more. It's because this angle's here, and then we got to meet here, sharper than a 90. So pretty hard to do with a brake. So we get it as far as we can with the brake, and then work it the rest of the way over with a hammer. It's tucked up. Here's your floor coming back, so it's above the floor. There's 2 holes drilled here, and the only thing I can figure, that's not factory, is when my father stripped this car and cleaned it, he probably drilled those 2 holes to let the water out. But that's basically the same idea of what we're gonna do here, is we're gonna put 2 holes on each side of this, 2 here and 2 over here. And then we're gonna put 3/8 bolts through with washers, right through, and bolt that right up in here to this floor structure. And then on the back side, we'll take that strapping I showed before, and we'll actually bend it, fit it up, and we'll use the same bolt that holds the strap that holds the gas tank in. So we'll fit those straps right up along the old straps that are still there, the factory straps, bend it to fit, drill a hole, and we'll bolt it up in the same exact spot up there, bring it down, wrap it under, and weld it here in the back right to this. Now, I should really probably put a coat of paint on this, but you saw me mark it with the marker in a couple spots here. I'm gonna trim a little bit off of it for clearance. Mainly because if you have to take this rear axle out to do something, you got to get past the skid plate. And I don't want it overhanging the mounts on each end. So trim a little bit out of each end here. And then I'm going to trim just a sliver off the back of it because it looks really close to the rear axle when it, suspension's back up, which it should go back. It would probably clear no problem, but I'll just trim a hair off to be sure. Little trimming. This is bent, looks pretty good. I got to mark where I want the holes to be, but other than that, that looks pretty good. We're getting somewhere. I should probably trim this though and paint it before I get too far ahead of myself. So let's do that. we got it all trimmed up. We got some primer on it. During that time lapse, you saw me cut some strips over here. These two are the rear straps, which will get bolted in where the stock tank gets bolted in, same spot. We'll have to put some bends in them, and we're gonna have to grind this off and weld it in once we get it all up in there, but it's a lot easier to do this down here on the floor at this point. You also saw me cut these two strips and hold them up to the side here and take my Sharpie and mark them. I went ahead and I welded the bolts into these. These will go inside the car through the floor, and then a nut will go on the back side over on this. I'm one man, and I can't be in the car and outside the car at the same time. So this gives it a good backing, so you're not ripping this out of the floor. If you do, you got some serious problems on your hands anyway. This is the least of your issues. So this isn't going to get ripped through the floor. You got a lot of backing plate here inside the car. Grade 8 bolts, 3/8 bolts through. This skid plate's, I'd like to believe, is not coming off. Not without, I mean, you're going to be ripping everything off if you rip the skid plate off, okay? So, plus, I can't turn the bolts because they're welded to this. So once I stick this through the floor and then put this onto the bolts up in there, I'll be able to put a nut on the back side and turn it without having to worry about holding the other side of the bolt. So I actually need to trim these at an angle. I forgot to do that. I need to trim these at an angle because that's how the floor is shaped up there. You saw it before. So that these will set down in there, and then I labeled them right and left so I know where they go, because I didn't measure, I just eyeballed and marked the holes. So right, left, inside the car, I'm going to trim these up. I'm going to put some paint on this stuff, and then while that paint is drying, we're going to switch course and go over to the exhaust. So we'll trim these up, put some paint on this, and then we'll switch over to exhaust. And then we'll come back to this later. All right? Break. So, while that's drying, let's talk about this exhaust system, what you're going to need, well, what you're going to need to do it the way I do it. The rule books, most rule books restrict you to about 2.5 exhaust size. That's what this is. It all starts up front here with your flex joint coming down from the header. Again, my stuff is a little bit different than everybody else's stuff. My father machined this plate out, or cut this plate out. This matches up with the header flange up top. Again, I use through bolts. We talked about that in the last video. So I'll actually take this and I'll bolt it up in there. And then I'll actually clock this flex joint at the right angle to come down through the tunnel, because the tunnel doesn't come straight down, the exhaust tunnel. From the engine, it comes down at kind of a weird angle. So we'll get this clocked in there where it's supposed to go, tack it up, pull it out, weld it up. You can buy this piece, not this piece, you can buy one like this on eBay with the flange on it. If you type in cobalt flex joint, exhaust flex joint, whatever, down tube, down pipe, it'll pop up. There'll be one with a flange on it, like this, about half this size probably. The flex joint will be smaller, the whole piece will be a little bit shorter, okay? And I used one on the red car that I built that we gave away a while back. We gave it away on Facebook. I used one of these short ones. I'll find it on eBay and I'll screenshot it so you guys know which one I'm talking about, what it looks like, and I'll put it at the end of this little part of me talking, right? Because this is YouTube. But anyways, I'm gonna bolt this up in there. I'm gonna get this clocked and pitched the way I want it, and then I'll tack it. I'll tack it up pretty good, and then we'll actually work our way down the line. So when we come down the tunnel like this, we'll get this 45 on here, one way or the other. We'll get this 45 on there. We'll get that clocked where we want it to point it straight down the center of the car, down the tunnel that's in there. So from this piece, you'll have to use a little bit of this straight pipe to get to the muffler itself. This is what I run on all my cars. It's a Cherry Bomb. It's what's on my car. It's been on every other car I've built. On the red car, I actually bought the one that was half this size. I wanted to try it out. So I bought the one that was half this size. It is twice as loud. It's significantly louder. Some guys like that. It's cool, it's loud, you know, popping, banging, whatever. I prefer to keep my race car quiet. One, I want to hear the other guys coming. You can tell where they are once you get used to it. If somebody's next to you, you can hear them. So I tend to use the bigger one. Now when I say quiet, it's not street quiet. It's still race car. You know, it's still louder than a street car, but it's usually quite a bit quieter than the other race cars because people think race cars need to be loud. So one reason is I want to hear everybody around me. Second reason is they can't hear me. So I can sneak up on them. They're not going to block me, most likely, because they don't hear me coming until I'm already next to them. That being said, you got to remember that they can't hear you. So if you try to tuck it up next to them coming down the straightaway on the high side, you might get pinched off. You got to be prepared for that. That's, you know, that's a driving video. That's not really what we're doing here. We're building. So back to this. After this part, we got this part. A little turn down. Okay? Pointed at the ground. A lot of guys like to turn these and put, you know, they'll put a 90 on it and they'll come right out the side of the car. It's loud. Sounds cool. Well, now you got a pipe sticking out your car. People can hit. It's more pipe to get hooked on something. It's more pipe to get ripped off on the racetrack. Minimal. Just what you need to get the job done here. It's pointed at the ground so it's even quieter. Okay? Point at the ground, and plus you got to remember behind this is the fuel tank. Now we're going to have our skid plate there, and we'll talk about that when we get everything in the car, why I designed the skid plate the way I designed the skid plate, or the way my dad designed the skid plate. I got to give him credit. I played a role, but he thinks, we tend to think, you know, a few steps ahead, us white sides. We're a little bit different. Anyways, this points down at the ground. After this is up in there, this hanger will be right about here someplace. And then I'll use a clamp, little U-bolt clamp. We'll clamp that to there or here, somewhere in this general area. And the top of this will get bent over at a 90, and I'll actually put 2 bolts down through the floor from up top. It ends up being right about where the center console bolted up. You have to go through a couple layers of steel. We'll put a couple bolts down straight through a couple of these holes. That'll be bolted up in there, bent down, hooked to that. It's flexible, it can move, the motor moves. Okay, that's why you got the flex joint, that's why it's mounted flexible here. Things move, okay? That's it, that's what we're about to do. We're about to take this and tack, weld, work our way down. I gotta get all the stickers off of here with the wire wheel and stuff, but you know, I'll grind some of that powder coating off that muffler. But we're gonna get this thing set up in there, kind of where we want it, tack it, get it down on the floor, weld it all up, and then put a gasket on it. And in she goes for the last time. But there's a few steps before we get that far, right? So, start the time lapse. Alright, so as you can see, the exhaust is in the car. I mean, it doesn't have a ton of movement, but it'll vibrate, it'll move as much as it needs to move. You know, things grow when they get hot too, so. Yes, I leave this in. A lot of guys, I'm sure, take it out. I don't leave it in every car. It depends on the condition of the car, really. I mean, if these things are all rotted out. But this is the Florida car. This is gorgeous. Pretty sure I left it in the last car I built too. But let's keep the cabin as cool as we possibly can, because on those hot nights, I'll take whatever I can get not to be smoldering up there. So the heat shield, yes, is still in. I didn't show you actually putting this bracket through the floor up there, but I did take a picture of it. So I'll throw the picture in so you can see exactly where those 2 bolts came up through the center console area. Console's not there anymore, but you'll be able to see it. I dropped those in, and just like the plates I made, I welded them up top so I can tighten the nuts down here and put this hanger bracket in up here to hold the back of this exhaust. So it's in. I'm actually gonna, I usually take a pair of channel locks or a crescent wrench or something, and I usually bend this tip flap down a little bit more just to direct it more straight down. I mean, the skid plate will be there and it's not going to get the tank hot, but I like to just point that down as far as I can. So, here we go. Bang, bang, boom. Little crescent wrench here. This is just a personal preference thing, I mean. Is it doing anything? I don't know, maybe. Does it look ugly? Yeah, it definitely looks ugly, for sure. Make it look a little bit better. Ooh, I uglied that up nice. But there. It's got plenty of clearance. It's kind of just a, I don't know, peace of mind. Whatever. So, exhaust is in. That skid plate might be dry. I don't know. Let me check that. Oop, no, that is still a little tacky, so that's okay. We've been at it for a few hours today. I know time lapse and the video makes it seem like I can do this in 20 minutes. I wish. That would be great. I cannot. So, it's been a few hours and I need to eat something, so that's going to be enough for today. I will see you guys in the morning. When the video comes back, it'll be morning, and we'll get the skid plate in, because by then it should be dry. It is still tacky, so tomorrow, we finish the skid plate. All right, all right, all right, all right. Oh, hey, YouTube. What's going on? Good morning. As you can see, the skid plate is dry. Got it lifted up in there. Getting the straps located here. You can see here I took this strap and I bent a little 90 at the top of it there. I still got to do this one, but we bent that one, drilled a hole in it. Now we got that up in there, and we can figure out where we want to bend the bottom of this one. Get that bent up and under. And then we can weld it. And bingo bango, that's it. And it's in. Well, not bingo bango. We gotta put the little bolt things through the front there that I made yesterday. We gotta do that still. So that's what we're doing. Let's get this skid plate in here. And then, I don't know what we're gonna do after that. Maybe we'll play with some gauges or something, get some of that stuff hooked up. But Monday morning, or not Monday morning, it is Sunday morning. Sunday morning. I slept too late, so we gotta get moving. Let's go. That's it. The skid plate is in. As you can see, bolted up where the old straps bolt up in the back. We're welded. You saw me spot welding that and kind of jumping back and forth. Oh shit, I scratched the red paint. Darn. You can see those bolt plates I made are up in there. All bolted up. Yeah, I mean, it's spot welded because you can't, you could pour the heat to it probably. It is, how did a hair get in the paint up there? Yeah, so not the prettiest welds in the world, but I'm sure somebody was thinking, oh my God, he's welding and there's a plastic tank. I can't even get a good look at it. There's 3 layers of steel before you even get to this plastic tank. So, yes, I'm welding and there's a plastic tank above there. Obviously, I don't think I need to say it. You should have any fuel leaks repaired before you even think about doing what I just did. There shouldn't be any gas on the floor or open containers of gas anywhere nearby while you're doing what I just did. But I've done it like this for a long time, and I've never had an issue. Like I said, there's multiple layers of steel there, and I jump back and forth. You saw it in the time lapse. And I spread out the heat. I don't just pour it on. But yeah, that's what that looks like. I don't know if I can hold the camera high enough for you guys to see in here or not. Yep, there's the bolt plate right there. So that's what it looks like. It's going to take a lot to yank that thing through the floor. So skid plate's done. Exhaust is in. God forbid this thing ever ends up upside down. It sure is pretty on the bottom. So, all right. I'll show you how I hook up some of the gauges and stuff now. Kind of get that out of the way. It's going to be a little while before the wiring harness gets here, so there's only so much we can do. And I'm not going to show you paint or graphics until after the owner sees it. So, on the day he shows up to pick it up, hopefully he'll let me do a reveal so that you can see it when he sees it. And yeah, we are pretty much there. Short of the wiring harness getting here and getting that done. Mechanically, we got to put some gauges and wiring in. I got to weld the battery box in the back. I do got to do that. We can do that today. All right, let's move on. Okay, so before I jump over to that battery box that I talked about a minute ago, let's talk about these gauges quick. They're in the, I've already got them in. They're hooked up in there. You can see the red wire going across because the power will be over there. I'll tie that stuff up better, cleaner after I get everything in the car. When the wiring harness comes, there's stuff that gets wired in through here. I still got to put the power steering controller and stuff in, but same thing with the tack. I can't really do anything with the tack. I'll get it mounted up there and get the wire pulled through, but this, where'd it go? The tack's over there on the floor. That tack is will be set to 1 cylinder when we finally do hook it up, and the wire will come through, and the wire will hook to one of these coil wires. I don't have a harness to hook it to, so there's no point in even going over that. But we can go over the water and the oil. So this is your water temp, mechanical, and the warning light for your water temp. Those are coming out of the heater core hoses. So a couple of small short pieces of hose. You come up, make an H, 1/2 inch NPT here with some barb fittings for the hoses, obviously. But Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever, stop, grab this stuff, make yourself a little H here, put some hoses on it, hook it up. Simple, right? Pretty easy. You don't got to drill and tap no holes or nothing. And then you got your water temp and your warning light here. I'll run the wires together so I can sleeve them and put them through the wall here. But anyways, that's that. This braided line down here is your oil pressure. It goes, if we can get the focus, down in there. You can see there's a couple fittings. There's an Allen head in the side of the block down there that you take out, and you put this adapter in with this other fitting here. I'll show you what we got here. On my car, I think it runs under the header, but I'm going to pull this one up and zip tie it up here so that it's not laying right on the header. But that's not tight. I just finger tightened it. It's kind of a pain to get to. So there's that. Here's the part numbers you need. This actually is an adapter because I need one for another motor, but metric adapter 2278, we talked about it before. You need that to go into the block of the motor. It's metric to standard. And then this is the 4-foot braided line. Gauge line kit 48 inch 46110-48. This line comes with the fittings you need. One of these fittings goes into that brass fitting. The other one is a female to male that goes on the gauge itself. Screws onto the back of the gauge. And then I just dropped them on the floor. Here, hold on a second. Here's some leftovers I had from doing it before. So that's the male to male. That's the one that goes in the brass fitting. I got 2 extras here. And then the other one is female to male that goes on the gauge. But that's what you need to do oil pressure on these things. So that's that. All that stuff's in there. Nice, clean, pretty engine bay. And we will move on to the battery box, I guess, because we got this pretty much hooked up. I'm going to tighten that oil line before I walk away from it and forget. But then we're going to go to the battery box, which is a whole nother process. So that's it. There's the battery box in the car. And the time lapse there, you saw me weld the box together. This is a weld together kit from A&A Manufacturing. They do sell a box already welded together. And you got to make sure you know what size battery you're going to use before you order this stuff. But I've said it before, A&A Manufacturing is where I get a lot of my brackets and stuff for this kind of things. And yeah, they got really cool t-shirts too. So buy one of those while you're there buying brackets and stuff. So, yeah, A&A Manufacturing makes that. I modified it a hair. This top part here, where these tabs are bent over, you saw me weld that one over there. Those were straight, so that you could, like, set it on a frame rail or something and weld it. Depends on where you're putting it. The battery in a Cobalt is in the back of stock. Usually it's right there. On two of our cars, we have it up in the left front next to the motor. The reason being is to get some left front weight up there. Two of the cars on the team, they're up front. The other two cars are in the back. So I put lead on my left front, and I put my battery back here. I just move it up there onto that frame rail, kind of right inside the right rear wheel. The reasoning is there's setup. There's a reason for that. It's weight distribution setup. On front-wheel drive cars, you play with your weights left front to right rear. So that's why it's up here on the right rear. My car performs well. And my teammate Curtis's car performs well, and that's where our batteries are. And then Andy's and Don's cars, they're in the left front, and their cars perform well too. I don't know if they have lead in the back here. They might. Hard to say. But that's what you play with to get your cross weights and whatnot. So anyways, this is here. I did drill a second hole there on the side to shorten the stud that holds the clamp for the battery, because my battery is kind of small. And I didn't think the clamp was going to reach. So now I have two holes to choose from. So if I put a bigger battery in, I can go to the top hole. If I put a smaller battery in, I just go to the bottom hole. No big deal. That's these little things here. They little studs. And then there's an angle bracket that holds battery in. No big deal. So that's that. I run the factory cable. It's not in here right now, but the cable from the factory, like I said, it comes from back here. So I take the factory cable. Normally from the factory, it runs from back here all the way through the cabin and all the way up to the motor compartment to the fuse box and starter. We're only going to run it up to our kill switch, so I will shorten the factory cable is usually how I do it. I just shorten the factory cable and hook it to the kill switch, and then I'll run another piece of wire from the kill switch up to the front for the fuse box and starter and whatnot, alternator, all that good stuff. We're not going to cover that today because this video is already pretty long. And that last time lapse, I did like a nice smooth jazz for you, you know, bring us into the end here. So anyways, that's it. As usual, keep it creative and happy building.